In this video, I'm going to teach you how to trick your brain into motivating you to study. Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name's Dr. Hilton and this is the channel where we teach you how to improve in your study. And today we're going to be teaching you a trick that you can play on your brain to motivate yourself, not just to do studying, but actually anything that you're trying to achieve. So we're going to start with a few principles of kind of how the brain works and a few basic concepts of psychology. And then we're going to dive into how you can actually trick your brain to make yourself motivated and really want to study and driven to do so. So the first thing that I want to cover before we go into any of these things is the concept of the mind versus the brain. Now the mind is where all the deep thought, philosophical thinking, all these wondrous things happen with humans. However, on the other hand, the brain just carries out the mechanics of what you need to do. So I want you to treat it as a stupid, dumb dog that needs to be trained, and the brain can easily be tricked and fooled and coerced into doing things that are good for you, even though it thinks that it doesn't want to do it. And that brings me on to the second concept that I want to teach you, is that in our brain, every decision that we make, every action that we take is governed by a scale that we weigh up in our heads between pleasure and pain. So any action that we actually decide to take, it means that in our brain we've got the scale weighted more favorably in terms of it being pleasurable rather than being painful. So that brings me on to the third concept, which is how we're going to psychologically condition our brain to do anything that we're avoiding, whether that be studying or anything that we know that we should be doing, but we're putting off with procrastination. And this is a concept that I discovered from a great motivator, Tony Robbins, who I find really inspirational and motivational when I'm trying to do work. And this is a concept that he talks about called the 6 human needs. Now what he says is to have a fulfilling life, we need to be fulfilling all of these 6 needs in whatever way that we can. Now people will do all sorts of weird and wonderful things to get the pleasure from these needs in an array of ways that they can. However, if we can condition ourselves to get some of these needs or to tell our brain that we're getting some of these things from studying or anything that we're trying to do, we can motivate ourselves internally by telling our brain that we're getting the pleasure from achieving these. So before I go into them, I'll actually explain that these 6 needs are paired and they're actually on a paradox from one another. And when I go through them, you'll see exactly what I mean by how they are almost on opposite ends, and it's about finding the balance between the two to make sure that we have it right. So let's go through them and then I'll show you how you can associate them to studying to motivate yourself to do more. The first need is certainty. Now this is the area of our life that we want security from. So that's making sure that we've got enough food to eat, that we've got shelter, that we can generally be safe to know that we can survive without any danger. The problem is that if we get too certain about things, it gets too comfortable, too predictable, and that's when we get bored. So on the opposite side of this, where we have to strike the balance, is our second need, which is variety or uncertainty. This is where we have unpredictability, some surprises and things that just keep us excited and on our toes about the thing that we're trying to pursue. The third need is significance. Now everybody has a different level of which ones they want to fulfill, but on some level everybody wants to feel important and like they matter and like their life is worth something. This is one that people who are applying to medicine hold quite highly because they want to feel important and want to do a job where they're caring for people and they actually matter. The fourth need is connection and love. Everybody, no matter who you are, will always need someone in their life to help support them, whether that be good friendships, family, close partners, whatever it is, we all need a level of connection to feel like our life is worthwhile and fulfilling. And the reason that these two are on a continuum with one another is that if you become too significant, too important, you can imagine the high-powered people who don't have any time to spend time in their relationships, then they get too distant from people. So it's about finding the balance for something that's driven by significance and the need to be important and successful versus something that's not taking them too far away from being and spending time with the people that matter to them most. And these might seem a bit weird, but I'll show you in a minute how we're going to link these to studying to make sure you associate them with your brain and get motivated to do more. Final two are actually not paired, but they are the most important, especially for fulfillment. The first one is growth. To be fulfilled in life, you must feel like you're continually developing, improving, and just getting better with every day. We know what it's like when we're learning something new and we just really feel pumped about it. We're getting lots of energy and just real satisfaction from learning either a new skill or gaining some knowledge that you know you can apply later. And the final one is contribution. To have a fulfilling life, people want to feel like they're giving back or making a difference or helping the next generation in some way. And if we can tick all 6 of those boxes, that is really a recipe for a fulfilling life. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to be able to satisfy these with studying alone, but they say that once you can fulfill 3 or more of these needs with one activity, that is the kind of thing that you'll be completely addicted to and just so jazzed about that you'll continue to want to do it regardless of how motivated you are or what kind of mood you're in. So how can we link these up in our brain to associate them to something? So let's take the example of studying and go through how we can rethink these things and rewire our brain to associate associate pleasure with studying in the ways that it fulfills our needs. So we can associate certainty to studying in our brains in the fact that the more that we study, the more knowledge that we know that we'll gain, the more useful that will be in the wider world, and the more applicable it will mean that the more knowledge that we have and apply, it might mean that we can earn more later in life, it might mean that we can just have more intelligent conversations, but we can definitely be certain that that knowledge gained will be used in some way to enrich in our lives. Now, of course, study doesn't always have the direct relationship of input equals output, but you can be more or less sure that the more hours that you put in, generally the better your exams will go and the more knowledge you'll gain. When it comes to variety, the way that we can motivate ourselves to study is to mix it up. Basically, take the material and engage with it in different ways. So you can read notes, you can do past papers, you can watch YouTube videos about it, you can talk about it with your friends. The more varied the ways that you can engage with the material, the more fresh you'll keep it, the more exciting. You can talk about how it gets applied in the real world to new developments or just something that's a lot more interesting than maybe the more mundane ways that it's presented in the textbook, and just bring that thing to life and bring that subject to life so that you can just have more enjoyment out of the way that you engage with the material. Significance is usually quite an easy one. You can link to how this material is going to raise maybe your grades, and that's going to mean that you get into better jobs, and therefore you're going to feel more important because you can have maybe a bigger impact with the doors that it opens. So it's just about associating how this moment when you're studying, how that's going to lead to things which will eventually have a knock-on effect to you having maybe a better job in the future or being in a better position to create a bigger impact. And I'm sure with all of these, you can think of your own examples of how you can relate pleasure to each of these aspects, but these are just some examples that I'm suggesting that you might want to use. The next one is connection. Now maybe that one's a bit tricky to associate love and connection and relationships with studying, but it could just be as simple as this might lead to you having more interesting things to talk about with your friends. Or it might be simple things like, let's say it will help you win a quiz and then you and your friends might win a prize or something like that. It's a bit of a tenuous link when it comes to studying and how it will lead to connection and love, but I'm sure there are ways that you can think of that link pleasure, connection, and studying. For example, my friend who's a stay-at-home mom was telling me how she links doing the housework to connecting to her family, providing better for her family, and therefore she feels love and connection just by doing the housework alone. Growth is quite an easy one to link up because essentially every bit of knowledge that you're getting is helping you improve, learn more, take more on, that's going to help you impact more in the future. And finally, contribution. You can think about how what you're studying now is going to lead to either directly or just by opening the doors to you being in a position where you can help your society, your family, other people that are close to you just by doing what you're doing now. For example, those of you who are studying to become doctors, any bit of information, whether it's just getting you onto the medical course or actually is medically related knowledge that you're going to need to apply later, is going to contribute to you one day helping a patient and saving a life. And I think that is a fantastic motivator in itself. So those are just some ideas of how you might want to link in your brain the connection between pleasure and studying. But you can literally do this for anything. I absolutely hate ironing. And for example, I like to mix it up by maybe saying that I'll get variety, so I'll listen to a podcast or listen to some music, and at least I know that I can enjoy that, and then that will give me certainty that I'll get joy out of ironing. But this is one of the most fundamental things of how the brain works, associating those 6 human needs, getting to grips with the relationship between pain and pleasure in the way that it motivates you to take action, and really just getting control of that dumb dog that is your brain and training it to behave in a way that's going to make you succeed in the way that you want to. And all of those tricks are put into practice in this video here, where I show you how I can study for 4 hours without stopping and just remain focused and really productive throughout. So thanks for watching, and I will see you over in that video.